I've got the track at both ends now coming across and into the area where the yard's going to start. It's the same at the other end as well. I'm tempted to really get under and get going and get all the point motors in. There are those two curved ones on the darker piece of ply, and then on the soft ply here there's a load more. I think the thing that's holding me back is actually the technology isn't quite ready for it, because although you've got two sets of points over there and then another, there could possibly, there's a one over there and four on here. Most of these boards will lift up and I get the motors in upside down and then put them back down again. But I think the thing that's holding me back is actually there aren't any PCM driver boards or Arduinos anywhere close by to plug the motors in once they're down. In fact, the closest one to them is down there. So I think I need to get the infrastructure in place to start with, which means shifting that Arduino, I think, and putting it, I've got a board ready, put it on this board here. I want to do it in the least disruptive way possible, because this board is already driving the four sets of points that are on the upper deck where the incline gets to its maximum height and has the two crossovers to get onto what will be the upper deck when it's there. I don't want to move that relay or that PCM driver board because I don't want to pull those wires out again, and I've learnt from a pretty horrific experience that the TTL driver modules are pretty sensitive and I don't want to upset them any more than I can. So I think before I get started on this board I need to plan out what technology I'm going to need, where I'm going to need it, and what I'm thinking is I'll shift that Arduino and I'll put it over there on that board, and I'll put a PCM driver board and a relay on that board as well. I'll then extend, because these these PCM driver boards, along with all the pink and purple cables in it, because they're extendable, I'll then pull the four cables, I think it is, I need from the end of the PCM driver board that will be on there. I'll make sure that I've got enough sockets on one, because I can only drive 8 sets of points from one board, so I'll count up what I'm going to need on this end and make sure that just one board will support all of the points I need over in that corner. If not, I'll put 2 PCM driver boards and 2 relays on that board. But once it's gone through all that, I'll then pull the 4 cables it needs to extend from one PCM driver board to another across these 2 rafters, just through the holes in the timbers like that. I'll bring them down here and I'll plug them into this PCM driver board here, which will mean this board doesn't need to move at all. I may need to readdress it, which won't take too long. Then this board, this support board here, won't need an Arduino on it at all. It just means I'll be pulling less cable, and I won't need cables as long, just because there'll be a couple of PCM driver boards close to where they need to be for all the points. And I'll very probably do the same down the other end, except that at the other end there isn't an Arduino already, so I'll need to put a third one onto this RS485 chain. What I'm testing here on this slightly messy board is I'm just trying to recreate what will actually happen on that far side of the layout, in that I want to chain at least 2 PCM boards together, but I don't want to change the address on the one that's already up there, just because the solder pads are very small, and I don't want to take a soldering iron up to it because it's already plugged in, it's already got all of those wires in and it's already working, so I don't want to mess with it. But I'm going to move the Arduino away from it a few rafters. So what I want to be able to do is, when I move the Arduino away, start the chain with a new PCM board which will be addressed 1, and I think this is the one. Yeah, you can see the blob of solder that I've dabbed onto that one. So the chain will start with a board at address 1, and then the second board in the chain will be address 0. So I just wanted to make sure that if you do it that way around, it will still work, in that there isn't a necessity in a chain of PCM control boards to have the addresses in sequential order, and fortunately the results appear to be that it's fine to have whatever addresses you want, because I've tested both of these. That's address 1 and that's first in the chain, that's address 0 and that's second in the chain, and they're both working fine. I'm quite understandably at least a little bit nervous about switching this on. So the Arduino and the TTL board have moved 2 rafters along. The TTL board has to come along because it connects directly to the Arduino pins. That's a new PWM driver board with an ID of 1, which currently has nothing connected to it, so it's effectively just a full pass through. It's also got a feed from the 5-volt power bus cables that have been there for a while, but I haven't actually plugged in yet. I'm going to plug them in shortly. And then it's got the 4 output cables, the SCL, SDA, VCC and ground, and they're going off over to where the existing PWM board is. And this is the existing PWM board, just minus a Arduino and TTL module. There's the 4 cables that are coming from the board a few rafters down, and they're going straight into the same pins, SCL, SDA, ground and VCC, and then everything else down here is exactly the same, apart from the 5-volt power supply is now also coming off the shared supply, which I'm about to plug in. It certainly sounded good. The 5-volt came on and the relay power came on. I've now turned the Arduino on. I've got lights there where I would expect lights. There's on the TTL module as well, and then a couple of rafters down. We've got life down here, lights on the relays, and when I turned the Arduino on, there was a load of buzzing and moving amongst the servo motors up there. So I was going to plug the laptop in and just try the debug calibration sketch, but actually with such positive and kind of expected movement when I turned it all on, I might just go straight to JMRI and see if everything still works. I think this might be the first time in my entire life that something has worked first time. I may need a sit down. So while basking in my glory and possibly on a roll of success, I think I might, because they're so close, this is the second node that I haven't touched yet, the one on the other side, and it's still on a independent 5-volt supply down there, so it might be a good time to plumb it into this these grey and blue cables here, because I know that they're now live 5-volt. One other plus side of that is it would mean that the TTL modules would all be on a shared ground, which is a recommendation rather than a requirement, but I might as well do it. And this isn't supposed to be a plug for a catalogue for a well-known model railway merchant. I just put those boxes down when I'm working, so that when I was doing all the unscrewing on there, it just means that if I drop any screws, bolts, nuts or anything, the box catches them and I don't end up fishing around for them in the insulation. Just as a bit of an aside as well, if I maybe move this way a little bit, I'm going to have to get a bit clever, because that little white flash right down there is the plug socket where the track power is, where the 5-volt bus power is. And so every time I come in and every time I go out, I've got to crawl under here to get at it to turn track power and 5-volt power on and off. And similarly in the opposite corner, there's now an Arduino that's plugged into a socket in a similar position, which also needs to be switched on and off when I come in and out of the loft. So I think I'm gonna have to come up with a wiser plan for how on earth I can get all that power switched on and off without having to do all that crawling around and so far I've come up with no ideas. Okay, I've just had a major panic, but I think everything's alright. When I plumbed this lot into that existing 5-volt power bus and then started testing, 2 of the point motors on this side weren't working and 2 of the point motors on the other side weren't working. So I turned the power off, I plumbed the local 5-volt power supply back in, and everything's working again on this side now. So it looks like my limited knowledge of electronics has let me down a little bit, and one 5-volt power bus is not going to power all of these servo motors, relays, TTL modules, and everything else, PWM driver boards that's hanging off it. I guess maybe I could try a higher ampage, but also maybe I could just try what I know to work and power them locally. Just doing a little bit of incline testing with the APT. It's doing pretty well, really. Still only got one power car on it, and it's got 2 coach packs. Now it does slow down as it hits the hill, but I'm not hearing any wheel spin, and it's not struggling. The slowdown is less pronounced if it's going at a higher speed, but lower speed is where you'll really see the struggle if there's going to be one. There's obviously a dodgy connection in one of those coaches with the lights. I hope it's wheels, because if it's not, there's not much I can do about it. But there's no wheel spin, no grumbling. And a bit of speed up once it hits the downhill. I did try, I've got one more coach pack. The one that's not on at the minute is the TRBS, and this is its limit. I tried even just one more coach and it was wheel spinning on the uphill. But I think, considering it's not a heavy motor car, the one on the APT, and it's having to count. I can't actually remember which of those middle 2 is the power car now. I think it's possibly the right hand one. So it's having to push 1, 2, 3, 4 coaches and pull 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coaches. That's not bad. Up a hill. This incline loop, although I'm using it as a running loop now, that's just because I haven't got any other ones. Once I'm actually well into getting the track laid and the upper deck started as well, this really will just be an access line. As long as something can get up and down it once in a blue moon, I'm happy with that. It doesn't have to do laps and laps and laps of it. Those lights are very annoying. have been some very kind comments since I last posted the last video up. I'm a bit concerned about my mental well-being, I think, with all of this electrics nonsense. There've been another couple of issues since. I think I got them on video, but I hopefully got the last ones I'm aware of, the last current ones, sorted today. I think I now have all servo motors, all relays and all TTL modules working off the one 5-volt power bus for the first time, which sorts a lot of problems and also makes the whole system, I guess, more expandable, because I can just tap into it, hopefully, with new modules. I'm going to have to add another new Arduino into it soon. So I've just ended up sat up here this evening with the APT, which tends to be, I think I've mentioned before, the best of the track problem finders. Let's say if there is a problem with the track, the APT tends to be the first one to notice, and it's circling and squeaking along beautifully like Hornby APTs tend to. I've taken 2 of the coaches off it, really just because I think this is the right length for the layout, and also with the extra 2 coaches on it, it was the motor car was right at the limit of traction, and I think I was getting the odd slip, whereas with just the 2 extra coaches on it, it's flying around beautifully, and it's still pretty long, and I think, yeah, any longer than that and I'm going to be pushing the size of the layout. I've also got, I discovered at the bottom of a box an old, I guess from the 80s, probably hasn't been touched since the 1980s, twin pacer. And I quite like those twin pacers because I used to travel on them a lot, so they're kind of, even though they were rattly and a bit rubbish, they got a special place in my heart. And this is a regional railways livery one. I do have a Northern Spirit one, I think, that's DCC converted and runs around the layout sometimes in a box down there somewhere. But this one was absolutely refusing to run. I had to strip it right down to the bare motor just to get the motor to turn. But I've got it boiled back together and got a little bit of oil applied, so I've set it up this little DC tiny little oval, and I've got it running around, loosening it up after giving it a bit of an oil and a service. I've got most of the components of the second car for it, but not all of them. But I think in DCC terms it doesn't really want a motor in both cars anyway. I think I need to be able to strip the motor out of the second car and probably share the pickups between the 2 cars somehow. I'll work that out later, but right now I'm just giving it a little run in and a loosen, and it seems to be going well, so hopefully I wasn't really going to DCC convert anything else, any other old trains for the layout, but this one's a bit of an exception in that you can't get a off-the-shelf DCC version of it, and I do quite like them. So the motor in it's much simpler as well. You don't have the complexities of the Ringfield motor with it, so I think I'll carry on with this one and see if I can get it DCC converted and running on the layout. I am a bit of a technology geek, so I have quite a lot of old tablets, phones and that kind of technology lying around, so they're all making their way up to the loft, and really I'm going to start making pretty good use of them. This one's just a panel, I guess, for the 4 crossovers that are down there. It's quite handily placed, obviously, directly above, and it's kind of given me the idea that with all these different tablets lying around, although this is because it's quite a small screen, it's scrolled to where those 4 sets of points are on a what's essentially a bigger panel. In JMRI you can have as many panels as you like, and each panel can represent different areas of the layout. So I'm starting to think, with the way this is clamped up here, it might be an idea to have other tablets dotted around other concentrated areas of points, like the station approach when it's there, and the entry and exit to the yard and all the yard lines, and I can just design a panel dedicated to whichever area, whichever tablet or phone is above, and also design it so that it fits onto the screen that it's using, and each different screen can hold a different panel, which is a heck of a difference to, you know, this reminds me, I had a panel up about here and the old layout, and all those pink and purple cables that were coming up the rafter in order to feed them. So I'm quite hopeful that this approach might work. This tablet's the oldest one I own, so this one I just carry around with me, but it's still good for engine driver, and it'll run 4 throttles. It's, with it being old, it's heavy, so I don't put it up in one of those clamps like I've got the little one, but it does to carry around. I've also got kind of some modern technology as well, but that I've actually used them around the house as well, so I don't want them to live up here at least, so just all the old technology can come and live up here. Now I've got the start of the electrics underneath this board. I've put motors underneath these 2 sets of curved points, so I'm ready to head into the yard on this side. What I'm thinking is, because on this side, well, both sides will have sets of curved points, and there's the pretty sweeping bends down at the other end as well, I think I'm going to test the lines before I put the yards in. So the top, the kind of straight on lines coming out of these 2 turnouts on the left will be the through lines, and the turnout end will go into the yard. So I'm going to put the top line in on both, so one here as well. Lay the track down. There's going to be a set of points there that'll split into 2 sets of track down there, and I'll just put a great big long straight on the end of that one all the way down to the other end. There'll be 2 lines here, so I might as well put them both in, because again, that's testing the actual line that trains will use on the loop, and again, it'll be on the outside of these 2 turnouts. But as soon as I'm putting this turnout down, I might as well put at least the beginnings of the second line in as well, because also I need to be absolutely certain that 2 lines will fit under this board. The board's narrow a bit further down. I don't think I'll be able to get it from here, but where the left hand of these 2 rails is here will end up being the very edge of the baseboard once it joins onto the next baseboard. I'll try and get that from the other end, but there's still very comfortable clearance for 2 trains, obviously, as long as they only pass on when the lines are straightened up and not when they're too close to the points. But there'll always be, the inside line will just have a parked train in here. Obviously they're not going to cross, they're not going to pass while both of them are moving. And this is the view from the other side. So near side is where I can just move it across a bit, where the baseboard narrows, so this track really is right at the edge of the baseboard, but there's still comfortable room for 2 tracks to run alongside each other, and narrower supports on the outside of the upper deck. So I'm going to go ahead with this and lay 2 lines, which will eventually, once everything's finished, be invisible, hidden at least. I've made a little template, hopefully just to make my life a bit easier. The idea is that I can saw or use it as a template to saw supports for the various parts of the baseboard. I'm just going to fall off, but if I stick it there, to hopefully make them consistently the same height. The idea is there's 2 bits of baseboard down there, because if I cut a chunk of the thicker stuff, the timber like that, the chances are it's going to be standing on the timbers rather than on the baseboard. But if I cut one of these arms, the chances are it's going to be standing on the baseboard. So this is the height of the upper deck based on that baseboard there. So the idea would be I can just kind going to stick this piece of wood in there like that, and then get down far enough. It's probably not shoved properly in, but then that gives me a template just to saw straight down there. And the other side, because these will be standing directly on timber and not on the baseboard, it just gives that extra 12mm so that I can cut it and it'll be the right height to stand on the timber. And so far so good. These are 2 of the 4 pieces of track that are going underneath the bit that'll be hardest to get to, just there. So I'm giving them a good scrub and clean before they go under. I will be able to get to them one way or another. If anything does cover this, it'll have to be removable so that I can get my hand behind. It's also accessible from the other direction because the baseboard doesn't go all the way to the back of the layout, so that if I crawl under, I can probably get in from the other side as well comfortably enough. But might as well give myself the best head start I can. That's the first piece, just about where I need it to be, I think. I can't see any point in drilling holes for those far side droppers. I think I'll just let them fall off the edge of the baseboard. It's going to be difficult to get a drill in to drill them. Although I can lift this a little bit, which is going to help with screws, hopefully, track screws. There's 2 longish pieces of track connected together, and each end just sticks out far enough for me to be able to connect something else to it. So I'll drill some holes for the black droppers, which will just about hold it in place for now. I really don't know if I'll get track screws in the middle of there. It's deeper in than it looks on this screen. Just maybe that'll give a bit of context. But if I can get screws at each end, that'll probably do it. Well, we're down. Tracks are down. Coaches are comfortable. Got some supports in. They need gluing. I tried screwing one of them, but it just splits the ply. So I'll have to glue the other 3 legs to the top of the baseboard. But it's all level, it's all secure, and it's much more stable than it was. And there's comfortably room, as it turns out, for those 2 tracks. If anything, they should have been further towards the supports in the end, but they're comfortable. This left one, obviously there's a great big drop on the left hand side of it, but it's on a long straight piece of track, so I can't imagine, obviously having said that, it's obviously going to happen, but I can't imagine a major derailment going on unnoticed for that long and then causing train to fall off the cliff. But no, there's no one on board. So I've cleared some space. My next job, I think, is there are corresponding curved points over at the other end for those, but each of them have come around from the ends kind of doing their own thing, and I've measured them. They're not actually all that far out in terms of distance from the edge of the baseboard, because obviously ideally they want to be in exactly the same position, so I can just pull track from the end of there, run it straight down there, because that'll be the bypass line, and connect it up down there. Now that's not going to happen, because even though they're roughly at the same height, they're not at the same angle. The one over that end is pointing much further sort of up in that direction, where this one's almost already, certainly the turnout's straight on, but straight on isn't far off either, whereas over there they're pointing way over in that direction. So I thought the easiest thing to do at this point is just to run a load of straight track, straighten this the far end out, and just run the track all the way down and see what it's looking like at the other end. No need to fasten anything down or anything like that at this point, just get it running straight and see what it looks like. Maybe looking at something like this in terms of number of tracks. I'm happy to lose, this is more than I thought I'd get, so I'm happy to lose one on each end. It would mean that I think each loop has 5 storage lines, because the outer loop gets one the other side of the barrier there, and then this is the through line for the inner loop, and there's just about space for 5 tracks alongside each other on the inside. Obviously they'll be further this way because you need time for the points to work themselves out. That is more, I was hoping for between 8 and 10, and this is 10, so if I need to lose one on each end, this might be a bit tight on this side. I'm happy to do it. I also want to just keep the opportunity or the possibility to be able to extend this upper decking right the way across. If I get this this yard working and I'm happy with it, and all of the block detection and that kind of thing will tell me which storage lines are occupied, then I might at some point cover the whole thing up, or maybe have a great big kind of tunnel portal there on each end. But if I do that, I'm going to have to leave. I can't pack lots of tracks in next to each other because there'll be no space for supports. I'd have to use those kind of thin supports anyway, so when I lay it, I'm going to leave gaps at certain points at this end, that side of that track, this side of that track, so that in the future, if I want to cover it up, even with something that's removable, then I've got the space on the baseboard to put supports down. Also, I want to leave a bit of space here just for a little bit. If I end up doing scenic stuff on here, I want just a little bit of room there for, if there's going to be a wall there, just a little bit of scenic work, like stuff, weeds and stuff growing against the wall before the track starts. So I'm gonna try and film as much as I can of fitting a point motor here. The first, I haven't cut a piano wire yet, so I'm gonna go for a reasonable amount so that I can pull the points up if I need to when I'm trying to get track fitted. So that much will do. I've learned to use proper cutters, snips, whatever they're called. On the last layout, I tended to be a bit gung-ho and used the orange handle track cutters for cutting everything, but soon realised that wrecks them. So I need to cut a little hook in them. Bend. So I use a pair of pliers to grab them and then turn them like that. So I end up with a little 90-degree hook. I can't quite see the camera here, so I'm sorry if I'm not putting it on there. So then get my mount, thread cable through that hole at the top, and then just stick the wire in, and that's it ready now. So I'm going to put it upside down. It's going to be, I think this is right in the middle, so it doesn't really matter which way it faces. Let's go for motor facing backwards. It sort of matters because I need to get at both, potentially need to get at both ends, make sure the points are right in the middle. Yeah, potentially need to get at both ends, both sides of the point motor, because the servo might fail, so it would be handy to be able to get to the back and swap the motor without having to pull the mount down. And I need to be able to get at the front with a screwdriver to adjust the position of this micro switch so it's placed perfectly. Unfortunately, the most likely and regular requirement is probably the motor, so I'm tending to favour, and it's also more awkward to get at and you have more to do as well, whereas adjusting this micro switch is less of an issue. So I tend to position the points so that there's the most access, easiest access to the motor, kind of, so it's furthest away from the nearest beam. So I'm now going to mark, proving with the points as close to the middle as I can get them, which isn't proving all that easy. That'll do. I think I'll just go this way a little bit. Mark a couple of drill holes there and there. I'll have to go near side of that one. Pull this away and get a tiny drill bit and just drill pilot holes so that underneath I know roughly where I need to be placing it. The battery on my Hoover's run out, so I can't suck that sawdust up just yet. So now, time to get underneath, make sure this stays roughly in the middle, and trying to get underneath and get the thing mounted. So I'm now underneath the baseboard. This is the hole I need to get the mount through, and these are the pilot holes here and here. So at risk of a little bit more face full of sawdust, the first thing I'm going to do with a slightly bigger drill bit is just expand these holes a little bit on this side. Mouthful of sawdust that time. I've also got a screwdriver with hopefully 2 magnetic screws, although I seem to have lost one. There they are. Really need to work with magnetic ones because it's all upside down. So get the screw sat on the screwdriver ready and have it close to hand, because obviously I'm going to, once I get the thing positioned, there it is. Get the screwdriver on the end of the screw on the end of the screwdriver. Get my mortar mount and just very carefully thread it through. Let the cables sort themselves out. Line it up so I can see the screw holes. Now one of those is directly above me, which is handy, as long as I can hold this with my left. And where did I put my screwdriver? Oops. Oh, over there. Gently thread. There's so many obstacles, so many things that can knock the screw off the end of the screwdriver here, dangling wires and everything else. And usually if I'm over insulation, the screw's gone. As soon as it falls off the screwdriver and falls down, I usually hit my head and then disappear. So far so good. I think that's a win. Still quite loose. I have to push quite hard. I think maybe I could have drilled bigger holes. That's going to hold now. My other screw. You can still see the screw hole, which means I'm good chance that my motor is aligned. Obviously, just you can peek through the hole still. Maybe not from that camera angle, but I can still see through the hole, so I can still make sure that the motor is roughly aligned. It needs to be parallel with the sleepers on the point that I can just see through the hole. Second screw in there. I need to put a bit of force behind it. There, that's good. I should film all of these. That's gone well. So there are my 2 sets of points with the 2 piano wires coming through, so hopefully that's those motors mounted. And I'm getting very close to having a couple of loops, especially the inner loop, because that's just a straight line. There isn't the extra set of points there, so I've got kind of roughly a piece of track there that'll connect to the straight on of that curved point, and then to that line, which then takes it all the way over there to those 2 sets of points, which have motors on them. But that's about it. And there's the set of points for the outer line there as well that splits into 2. So all I need to do here is, this is temporary, this board, so it's easy to lift up. Stretch those 2 bits of points with all the scrappiest track I've got, because it's all going to be hidden. Bring that down here to this set of points, which will then connect to this one that I've just laid here. But I've also got a heck of a lot of electronics to do. I need a new Arduino and PWM driver board and cabled up relay down under probably this beam here, because there's going to be so many sets of points here once the yard starts. It's taken a day or two, but I do have track laid all along this side now to complete the loops. goes all the way down there and off, right around over that side, and then back along here. I ended up laying 2 tracks over there just because of the sets of points. It was easy to lay them both, and the spacing, and also because I had to kind of tilt that bit that's pretty much fixed down, that's holding a little bit of upper deck junction. So I thought it was a good idea to get, if it needed 2 sets of tracks, get them both down. So they're both down now. There's obviously the turnouts here that will go into the yard, but I'm not going to work on that yet until I've got all of this working. So I need to get a motor under that set of points there, which I'm going to try for underneath, just because that's one of the bits that I had a shelf underneath fitted. So I'm going to try line on the shelf, because this layout's much lower than the last one, which means getting underneath and fixing motors isn't quite as difficult, because it's not a stretch when you're laid down. And I'd like to do some running and testing, because there's a curve here that I'm not particularly keen on. This is a 90-degree third radius coming from a fourth radius and then going in the opposite direction, so I really want to get that curve tested and make sure nothing falls off the track when working its way around. So I'm going to crawl under, see if I can get that motor fitted, and then it's just electrics, which I don't think I'm going to start on today. I need to get a new Arduino entire board fitted down there. I've done the wiring for the relay for it, but I still need to wire the whole board up, pull cables to it, get the TTL fitted, and screw it all to the board. And I need to get a relay fitted down the other end as well, and all the power supplies, 5 volts and everything to it. So, and then rewrite a lot of the code to handle multiple PWM modules on the same Arduino, which the code doesn't handle. So still probably a day's work to get to a point where I can actually run and test this. So I think all I've got in me tonight now is to sit with a glass of wine and edit a video. So I think I'll probably finish here and get this edited and up, with the hope that the next video will feature 3 loops of trains running.